if you think one of the big issues for me at boarding school is suppression of emotion. So anger wasn't allowed.
Yeah.
If you got
Okay.
angry, everyone just kind of got up and kind of went around you and said, psycho, psycho, psycho. You know, everyone laughed at you if you got angry.
Mm-hmm.
You showed sadness or tears, you know.
Laughed at that as well.
Yeah, so that time when I was in my cubicle and people came in, everyone was like, Simon's not so cool now. He's a wimp, isn't he? And everyone's laughing at me. So 30 boys in my cubicle.
Jeez.
And it was like, I'm never letting this happen again.
Yeah. Okay, so welcome to episode 3, I think. I'll do that bit again because it might be wrong. Okay, welcome to the Psychosocial podcast. This is something that I thought about creating because I wanted to have inspirational conversations with people who kind of leaders in their field, particularly people who've got knowledge about trauma, adversity and resilience. And I'm Warren Larkin. I'm a consultant clinical psychologist and managing director at Warren Larkin Associates. And I've spent, I think, 30 years now working with people affected by trauma. So today, I'm delighted to be joined by Piers Cross. Hello, Piers.
Hello there, Warren.
It's the first time we've met in person, even though we've known each other for a while, which is always nice. Piers is an author and a coach and a documentary producer, specialising in boarding school trauma. You're also the founder of Compassionate Leaders Global, which is an organisation dedicated to developing emotionally intelligent and compassionate leaders of the future. Welcome, Piers.
Thank you so much, Warren. It's a real pleasure to meet you in person.
You too. It's amazing that we've known each other for a while and physically we haven't actually been in the same space. I also should mention your film Boarding on Insanity, which I've been watching, which is amazing and really powerful, exploring the psychological impact of boarding school system and what the longer term effects of that are on society and on people, families, leaders, individuals, and how that distress can be kind of explained away, the kind of impacts of that, mislabeled, dismissed, denied, in the kind of wider understanding in society that this is meant to be privilege. So really want to get into the film later, but I always start by asking about people's formative years, about people's childhoods. I know it's a bit heavy to go straight into tell me about your childhood, typical for a psychologist, but I'm kind of interested in what were the kind of formative experiences growing up, and that'll then lead us in to talk a bit about your boarding school experience, which is kind of one of the areas you advocate for. Reforming, not for boarding schools. Yeah,
thank you. And bless you for your work. It's just so inspiring having listened to you, kind of read so much of your stuff and listened to many of your interviews. I was listening to your interview with Benjamin Perks yesterday, and it's like, wow, it's just, so thank you.
Thanks, Piers, that's really kind of you.
Yeah, so my childhood, I grew up in a military family.
Okay.
So Portsmouth.
Yeah.
So I was born in St Mary's in Portsmouth, and so my father, first 6 years he was at sea a lot. You know, in those days you could be at sea for up to a year at a time.
Wow. Royal Navy,
yeah. So he was an officer. All my family were, my grandfather, my godfather. On my mother's side they were more army. So it's just a military family, but my father was an alcoholic.
Okay.
And he got quite sick when I was age 5, and he spent a year in and out of hospital with cirrhosis of the liver.
Wow. Okay.
That was quite unsettling, and having him come and go, he was quite an angry man, an ex-boarder himself, and many of my family were. It was like a boarding school system. And so I struggled with my dad. When he came home, he was kind of very angry, felt quite humiliated, so we used to fight quite a lot physically. You know, I was only little, but I was quite fiery like him. Yeah. And essentially, age 10, this idea, so I'd gone off to Portsmouth Grammar School, and this idea of going to boarding school. And I'd been reading these boys' own magazines, and, you know, the annuals, they're all saying, you know, Biggs going off to boarding school. Oh, they sound amazing. And so, you know, I realised I didn't really have a choice on one level.
How old were you at that point?
I was 10 when I first, the idea came up. And one of my mother's best friends, she had a free place, the chance of a free place at this prestigious boarding school or an assisted place. And so I went up for the exam, which was 2 or 3 days. And, these schools are incredible. The lands, I think the school I went to, 1,000 acres. Wow. It's literally, I went up again a couple of months ago. And it's just like, I went up with the director, Ben Cole, and he was like, oh my God. Yeah. It's just very, very, a lot of money there. It's
imposing. It's like, I remember watching the film, it's a bit like Harry Potter, and the massive, big, grand surroundings and setting.
Yeah. So to go there, it was like, wow, this is amazing, and all of the facilities and the things you could do. And so I was sold. It was like this big marketing ploy, and I'm like, oh, I really want to go. And because I was struggling with my dad, it was like, right, great.
Win-win, yeah.
And so I went. First 3 weeks were great. It was like amazing to be away from my family. And then after those 3 weeks, my mother was meant to come up on leave day every 3 weeks. You could go home for a few hours, and she didn't turn up. And I was in the school, but the car broke down. I was stuck in the school on my own. And suddenly it felt a bit like Pinocchio when he goes to Pleasure Island and he sees behind what's actually happening. Suddenly I'm in this space where there's not all this movement, there's not all this stuff happening. And I'm like, I miss my mum. Yeah. I miss my dog. I miss my sister. My dad less so. I miss my home. And it was like, I want to go home now. So that was after 3 weeks, and I couldn't say anything really. Part of the reason I'd been sent is that my father could possibly die at any given moment. So it was like, well, you need to go. So I'm like, suddenly I'm trapped in this place. What do I do? So from being quite gregarious, and for the first 3 weeks it was quite good fun, suddenly I'm like, oh, everything changed. And I remember one day I was in the dormitory and I was just sitting in my cubicle. And to put this into context, I didn't have any privacy until I was 16, meaning I didn't have a door on a living space until I was 16. So age 11, cubicles, there was dividers, but no doors. No doors on the upstairs toilets, no doors on the upstairs baths or showers. Downstairs changing rooms all open. Toilets downstairs had doors, but the toilet paper was just like tracing paper, so no one went in there. Yeah. And so there was no privacy. So I'm there and I'm quite upset. Something's happened and I'm crying. And everyone goes, and I changed my name from Piers to Simon because I didn't want to get bullied.
Right. Because you thought Piers was an unusual name, or?
Yeah, there was one other boy in the school called Piers, and there was quite a lot of Simons. And I was like, this is not safe. And it's interesting, as I've done research into the leaders, there was a guy called Alexander Johnson who changed his name to Boris.
How interesting. Do you know what's... Whilst it's a different world, I'm growing up in Wigan in the 1970s, Warren, pretty unusual. I always wanted to change my name to something that was just blend in. So it's so fascinating that you've had that experience. Yeah. So did you become known as Simon, or did? Yeah.
So I changed my name. I didn't tell my parents, and the housemaster got in touch with me and said, "Oh, he's now called Simon," and I got a nickname. Everyone seemed to get nicknames. And I don't think I did it consciously, but what the maths teachers said, does anyone have nicknames? And I said, well, Zig. There was a guy at my grammar school called Simon who named himself Sig. So I'm like, oh, I'm called Sig. Sig became Ziggy. So that was my nickname. All those 7 years I was called Ziggy.
At least that's a cool nickname.
It was a cool nickname rather than a lot of them were, got for, soiling themselves.
You
got
away with that one then. You got a good nickname.
I got a good nickname. And so, but interestingly, as soon as I left boarding school, age 18, I changed my name back to Piers.
Okay, because it felt safer.
I don't know
to
why
be
I did
Piers?
it, because I'd left that school and
Yeah.
I was around my family again. So
So it
was
made
like,
more sense.
It made more sense.
So that was like a survival strategy back then.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah. So I changed my name during that time. So those 7 years, on one level, I was seen as a success.
Yeah.
I was good at sports. I was captain of athletics. I was
Wow.
in the first 15 rugby, first 11 football. I was in a rock band for a period of time. I was the drum major, leading out the 100-piece band.
Wow.
But it was only in my 20s I started to have a breakdown working
Right.
in the financial sector in London.
Right.
I started to reflect back, well, what had my boarding school experiences been like? And then it was like, actually it was hell.
Right. So there's these two personas. The successful, popular, cool Ziggy, does all this great stuff, it's very successful, and then you go off to London, you get a job in financial sector.
Yeah.
On the face of it, everything's going swimmingly. Family think you're doing really well, but inside you're kind of questioning why you feel this way.
Yeah. I was starting to feel I was going insane, starting to feel psychotic.
Okay.
And interestingly, I've heard 2 examples of that just in the last couple of weeks of other ex-boarders feeling like they're going psychotic.
In what way?
For me, it was just visions
Okay.
and, like seeing, like hurting people.
Right.
And, just seeing like quite violent images. And I'm like, whoa. And it was just this stuff that I'd suppressed, If you think one of the big issues for me at boarding school is suppression of emotion. So anger wasn't allowed.
Yeah.
If you got
Okay.
angry, everyone just kind of got up and kind of went around you and said, psycho, psycho, psycho. Everyone laughed at you if you got angry. You showed sadness or tears.
Laughed at that as well.
Yeah, so that time when I was in my cubicle and people came in, everyone was like, Simon's not so cool now. He's a wimp, isn't he? And everyone's laughing at me. So 30 boys in my cubicle.
Jeez.
And it was like, I'm never letting this happen again.
Yeah. So you learn to internalise those feelings, to hide them, to bury them.
Yeah. And the way I did that was, I see a lot of people do, is through suppression, through self-hatred.
Yeah.
That inner critic is
Yeah.
like, you piece of fucking shit, shut up,
Yeah.
don't show emotion.
Yeah.
And I now know, kind of through my leadership work, is that through Navy SEALs, people like that, they say your internal voice has to be really beautiful, really kind, really loving.
Yeah.
And yet most of the leaders I work with, they have a terrible inner critic.
Inner critic, yeah. Lack of self-compassion. This kind of inner bully that keeps you with your head down, stops you from attracting attention. And that is an evolutionary strategy that, we're mammals, aren't we? And if we raise our head above the parapet and we attract unfavourable social attention from the group, we become marginalised. So they push us to the edge of that community where we're more vulnerable to predators. So we learn to keep our head down, not draw attention, blend in, not upset the social norms and expectations. And we're still doing it. We're still doing it all these years later, thousands of years later, millions of years later. We're still behaving in that way because of this inner critic. So you were working in a successful job, starting to question your own sanity. Hence the title of the film, Bordering on Insanity. So you felt like you were bordering on insanity at that point. And these images, all these suppressed emotions and feelings were coming out in intrusive thoughts, images, dissociations, daydreams.
Suicidal ideation. I
Suicidal
talk about that in the film.
Okay.
That I was working for a publishing house for a while. So I worked both in sales, financial sales, and then in a publishing house. And for a period of time, I was homeless. So I was basically sleeping on friends' sofas, and it was pretty unpleasant trying to keep this job going. And I'd walk across the Waterloo Bridge, and I really was like, no one would notice if I jumped. No one would notice if I committed suicide now. And I just felt I had no one, and it just felt very, very lonely at that point. And I think I eventually got to that point, it's time for me to leave the city. And my father got cancer and died, and then I, quit my job. I left my partner and essentially left my home, and I didn't think it through. I was basically homeless for a few months, and then moved in with my sister, then went to live with my mother down in Portsmouth, and then I ended up going to Africa for a year. Just, I think it was to help others, so I didn't have to look within myself.
Yeah.
It's like, I get busy, but I got into drink, drugs, prostitutes, and it was like, it wasn't very healthy. Well, it wasn't healthy for me.
This is in Africa.
In Africa, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So you've gone on this journey. You've been through this, privileged education system. You had this lack of privacy, this environment where you had to survive by suppressing your feelings and emotions. You're successful on the face of it. You get a great job, but you're lonely. You don't feel fulfilled. You feel like there's no connection, and you leave it all behind essentially, and you go searching for something, whether it be distraction or a new chapter. But you go to Africa, and you get into ways of self-soothing that you describe as unhealthy. What happened next? What did you go from there?
Yeah, so I got back from Africa, and I'm like, I need to change. And I think I went on a bender.
How old were you at that point, Piers?
I was 25.
Okay.
So it was 2001, 2002.
So still technically an adolescent.
Yeah, exactly. And I really felt like that. In my 26, 27, I'm like, I'm still a boy.
Yeah.
And yet from the age of 10, as soon as, that's one of the illusions of boarding school, you're told as soon as you're 10 or 11 or 8, you're a man now. Don't tell you how to be a man, but it's like, dissociate, be a man. Want you to be strong. And so at that point, I went on a bender. So I went up to Edinburgh, Hogmanay, and I spent a couple of £1,000, I think, in a week, just on drink, drugs, and just stuff. And I was staying at a friend in Darlington, and his parents owned a pub, and we went out drinking all night, come back in, sleep all day, and I realised after a week I hadn't seen any sunlight for a week. And I'm like, I need help. So I went to see a friend, and at that point, they lived in Middlesbrough. I spent a few days just looking, going, right, what do I need? Okay, I need this, and I need to find a retreat centre. I need some place just to unwind. I'd got into meditation in 1997, living in London, and it was just at that point, right, let me find a retreat centre. And I think at that point there, that's when I put out, I've always looked after other people. I've always taken care. Now it's time for me to take care of me.
Okay.
And so at that point, I went to a retreat centre, and it's almost like the synchronicities really opened up. I met someone who was an ex-Buddhist monk, and he said, I know this monastery, you should go and visit. And essentially, I spoke to the abbot. They needed a kitchen manager, and I said, yeah, I can cook. And I went up for 10 days to visit this Buddhist monastery, and I ended up staying for 1,000 days, so 3.5 years.
Wow. Where was the monastery?
It was near to Newcastle.
Okay. So you went to visit.
Yeah.
Were you thinking, I need a bit of space to do that inner exploration? So you'd been suppressing it for all these years, and then it was like, we need some quiet time to get in touch with it. And you stayed for 3 years.
Yeah.
What was it? Because I like, from my point of view, hearing that, it's like, wow, that's quite extreme.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
For most people, being alone, being in a contemplative place for 10 minutes is quite a lot to deal with. So it's quite an extreme move, really. So what?
Yeah.
Say a bit more about how that. What made you want to stay? What did you find that was beneficial about it?
Yeah, so a great question. I think I got there just to be there for 10 days. I'd been offered a job working as the manager of Thailand for this company I'd worked in Africa. I would have had my own house, car, Western salary in essentially a third world country, and everyone family, when they heard I was going to the monastery, said, well, I've committed to go and help. I'm going to go and spend a few weeks doing that. Everyone was like, you've got to take this job. This is such a great career move.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew I was a mess, but
Okay.
I didn't tell anyone, because that was something I learned from boarding school.
Sure.
You do not tell anyone what you're going through. And so I went off to the monastery. I realised what a mess I was, and I spoke to people, and they were like, I think going to Thailand would be a really bad idea for you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. So I said no to the job in Thailand.
Right.
And I just committed for a year to be there to do the office manager's job.
Okay.
And after I'd been there for a few months, it was a bit like dominoes lined up. Okay, I'll stay here for a few months, and then I'd knock that domino down.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll stay for another few months.
Okay.
Okay, right, I'll stay for another.
So you were office manager, but were you actually then becoming attracted to the life of a monk?
Yeah, so
Was that a gradual thing, or?
Yeah, so I spent the first 4 months there just living as a lay guest. Could do my own thing, and have my own money, etc. And then after 4 months, I would be sat in the kitchen, and all the monks in the community would be sat in the breakfast area.
Okay.
And I would be talking to the lay guests, or on my own, and they would all be meeting as a community. And after a while, I'm like, I want to be in that
part of that community. Yeah.
And so I was like, I spoke to the abbot and I said, what about me becoming a postulant? They were called anagarikas.
Okay.
And that would mean shaving my head, wearing white all the time. And he said, sure. So in June 2002, I became a novice Buddhist monk.
Wow.
And the idea was I commit for a year. After I did a year, then I committed for another year. After another year, I committed. But the reality was, because of my trauma, it was hell, my Buddhist experience. It was so difficult. I self-harmed, I've got marks up my arm. I tried to take my own life. I have marks on my wrists where I tried to slit my wrists twice. And I started working with a Jungian analyst. And from going from a space where I couldn't cry, I couldn't connect to my emotions in any way, suddenly through doing dream work, she'd been a contemporary of Jung. She was friends with Aniela Jaffe, who was one of Jung's secretary, and she was just incredible. She was in her late 80s, and we worked once a week, and I went up to Edinburgh once a week. It was about 7-hour return journey. We would do 3 or 4 hours of therapy, and then I would come back
to the monastery.
In
the quiet solitude with your own thoughts.
Exactly.
So you went from years and years of suppressing your emotions and pretending, to be okay. And then you went through a bit of turmoil and externalizing, and then you're right, okay, I need to work on myself. So then you expose yourself to this quite extreme version of self-discovery. So not only the monastery, the kind of internal world and the meditation, but also psychotherapy once a week, Jungian psychotherapy. That's fascinating, Piers, because that is like one extreme to the other.
Oh yeah.
And you could argue that that was kind of another form of, I don't know, on one level I'm thinking you're trying to look after yourself, but on the other level you're kind of doing it in a way that is extreme and painful. So it's not a gentle way of exploring what you need and looking after yourself. It's quite I think the word brutal comes to mind. Which is not what you would associate with being in a monastery and doing psychotherapy, but for me that's like, wow, why did you do that?
Well, I didn't have a choice, to be honest, Warren. I was either that or I was going to leave and become homeless or kill myself. I was such a mess. Yeah. And I'd been there about 6 months, and my mother got sick, and I had a message from my family. Yeah. You've got to go and look after her. I'm like, I'm self-harming all the time.
Yeah, you're not in a position to.
I can't do that. And that caused a big rift in my family. Well, you should take care. And it's like, well, I can't.
Yeah, you're not equipped at that point.
I should. Essentially, I think if I'd been in the outside world, I might have been sectioned.
Right. Yeah.
You know, because of, you know, I'd often punch things, I'd have
Yeah.
bloody wrists,
Yeah.
hands,
Yeah.
and things like that.
Did the sense of being a part of this community, was that therapeutic? Was that helpful?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, how did I manage the community? It was very similar to boarding school on one level at the beginning. Because of the regiment, the rules, it was
discipline.
strict, the discipline. The difference is they cared about me.
Right. Yeah.
There was no care in this monastery. In the boarding school, there was no, you know, nothing in place to keep me safe.
Yeah.
There was no love in
Yeah.
the boarding school, whereas there it was like they really cared for me.
Yeah.
And I think I was very dysfunctional on one level, but because of my training, I would work really hard, and therefore I would transcribe the abbot's talks. I would do all of this stuff, but once so I'd sharp and do my work.
Yeah.
But once I left that space, it was like I was having to be with myself. And
Yeah.
how I see boarding school and emotion is, it's like a reservoir. All of these emotions you've put up behind that wall, and suddenly it's like, whoa! It started to wash over me.
Yeah. Sounds overwhelming.
Oh, I mean, it was like hell. I mean, and at the same time, I had similar experiences to Eckhart Tolle, like suddenly waking up and being in that space for 5-10 minutes, a bit like him. That the pain was so bad at one point, I was like, I can't go back because I can't look at that trauma. You know, what was bubbling up is sexual abuse.
Okay.
Couldn't go forward because, you know, I'd cut all ties with my family, friends, etc. Didn't have any future, and I couldn't be in this time because it was so painful. And there's a talk by the teacher Ajahn Chah, and he says, when you can't go forward and you can't go back and you can't stand still, that's where you practice. And in that moment I really got it, and I woke up. And for about 5 or 10 minutes, I moved into what might be called an enlightenment space, and it was just like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. And I had a few experiences like that, and I'd go and tell the abbot, I've just had this experience. And he'd be like, so?
Yeah.
So what? Yeah. And I'm like, but you don't understand. It was like I seen the nature of reality.
Yeah,
and it was like, so? Because he knew if I got attached to that, when the darkness came, I would be attached to that in the same way. Okay. And it's like letting go of the bliss. Yeah. And then it was easier to let go of the darkness.
The darkness. Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. What an experience. What a journey. Most people dip into that self-development work, that self-discovery work, do a little bit, go back to life, go and do another little bit, go back to life. You immersed yourself in it for 3 years. That's pretty. I mean, it's kind of like, you know, we're going to talk in a bit about people who've been to boarding school and how it kind of equips you for a leadership or a military lifestyle because of that self-reliance and that kind of relentless mindset, an almost kind of ruthless approach to surviving. It feels like you did that with the 3 years, the monastery experience. It's almost like extreme self-discovery, you know.
Yeah. I mean, out of those 6 months, out of the 3.5 years I was there, 6 months were in silence.
Wow.
You know, it wasn't at 6 months at a time, but it was 1 week, 10
God.
days, 1 week.
See, I can't imagine.
No. It was tough. Especially
if you're suffering, not being able to express it, not being able to talk to people, not being able to connect with people verbally. It's incredible, really, that you did it, and it's incredible that you survived it. But then again, your boarding school experience was perfect training for that.
Yeah. On one level.
One level.
Yeah.
Not that we would recommend it, but you kind of went about your self-development, your self-healing in a similar way. Because I guess it was familiar to you, that structure, that regime, that kind of discipline, that kind of self-contained, I can't talk, I've got to be, you know, dealing with what I've got, you know. At what point did you decide to leave? And then I'm kind of interested in how you continue your journey of self-development to the point where you thought, do you know what, I can help other people. Other people have been through this. This is not just me. Could you just give us that?
Thank you. Yeah. So I think it was 2005. You know, one of the things after a year and a half had been self-harming. I got chronic fatigue.
Okay.
ME, and I couldn't get out of bed. So I really struggled.
The body says no.
Body said no, but it meant I didn't have the energy to self-harm anymore. A lot of that anger, which had been there. And so what happened is, after 3 years, I was just talking to a friend, and he says, you know, you really need to start eating meat, because one of the the parts of it was vegetarian diet. You generally, the rule was you wouldn't eat after midday. So from midday through till 7 o'clock the next morning, you were fasting. I mean, it
just gets more impressive what you put yourself through.
The only things I could do was I could read, I could work, I could meditate, and what else could I do? You know, that exercise, meditate, read, and do creativity. I was celibate, so no self-pleasuring, no nothing like that, no sex, no connection with other females, no internet, no TV, you know, all of these things. So it was just, and the food thing was like from 7 in the morning through till midday, we were allowed to eat during that time. 2 meals, one was breakfast and one was kind of 11:30, so it was slightly later in summertime for like 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
And so after those 3 years, I'd lost a lot of weight. I think possibly 2 stone. I was down to about 9 stone at that point. And it was like, the abbot asked me whether I wanted to stay or go do another year.
Okay.
And I was like, And I didn't, after a week, I didn't have an answer. I didn't know. Because part of me was like, it's really great for me being here.
Yeah.
And I'm not well.
Yeah.
And I think I need to just get out of this space. And so after that week, I was like, I don't know what the right answer is. If you want an answer now, I'm leaving.
Okay.
So I gave them a month, and I passed on the accounts and the administration to someone else, who's still actually doing it now.
Amazing.
Which is interesting 20 years later. And I said, yeah, I'm going. So at that point, I spent about a year just processing the thing about leaving a monastery. They often say it takes about 5 years to recalibrate after being in that. It was a safe container, that once you have that safe container, then I could let go emotionally.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what happened. I just cried and cried and cried every single day for at least 2.5 years.
Wow.
You know, and I'd had nightmares every single night. It was like my psyche was just processing. But after 2.5 years, it started to ease.
Okay.
And the anger started to ease. And I, at that point, was like, okay, I'm going to step out. And I did. And after a year, I ran out of money. And so I went back into the corporate world. That's what my experience had been. Okay. And while I was there, it was a Fortune 500 company. People were like, that's fascinating, your experiences in the monastery. What I found is I was really authentic. This is me.
Yeah. Some
people found it really bizarre and went away from me. Others were like, wow, that sounds amazing. So I started to teach stress management, meditation in the company. I set up a website called Stress Relief Choices, which at one point had maybe 20,000 visits a month.
Wow.
To the website.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I did that for a number of years, and I started to do one-to-one work, and I realised that what I'd been through, there's people I can support others. And I think how that then transitioned, so in 2015, I'd had a YouTube channel for 10 years at that point. I've been teaching meditation, a lot of the experiences of the monastery. I was like, right, I'll put out my story of boarding school.
Okay.
And I was so nervous. I recorded it and I left it on my hard drive for months, because I'm like, I'm going to get shamed for this. You don't speak up.
Yeah.
Eventually I did. And that video 10 years later has now had 10,000 plus views.
Wow.
And people started to reach out to me. can you help me with my
Yeah.
boarding school stuff? And so I started to work nearly exclusively with ex-boarders.
Amazing.
And so that's been...
Wow.
The
What a journey.
yeah.
What a journey. What incredible discipline as well. Like, it's very... You could see how you would be the ideal candidate for Special Forces.
Yeah.
You would just... Yeah, you'd sail through that, I think. The mental fortitude and the ability to be on your own. And so I guess in some ways, whilst it was a very painful and dysfunctional experience, boarding school, you've got a lot of strength. You've got a lot of steel and determination and ability to adapt, ability to rely on yourself. I guess the challenge after that kind of formative experience is, like you said, to reintegrate and to open up to relationships, intimacy, being vulnerable, making it, like doing this, like you opening up, you know, your experiences and your vulnerabilities, and that's incredible given what we've just talked about. So this work you do now with other people, you've obviously developed a lot of experience personally, but you've also gained qualifications and training. Do you want to just say a little bit about how you accumulated the skills and knowledge to do this work?
Yeah, so first of all, it's like I wouldn't be doing this work, I wouldn't be here without my wife.
Yes.
You know, we met in 2007 and it was a shamanic workshop for a couple of weeks. Again, it was quite an extreme workshop. And
I'm not surprised by what you've told me so far.
Yeah. And so we did this workshop, and afterwards she was 14 years older than me, but absolutely incredible woman.
Yeah.
She'd had near-death experiences. She'd set up a healing centre. She'd really just an incredible woman. And one morning, so I moved to Hebden Bridge, where I now live, and she was born in Hebden Bridge, and we used to meet up for walks. And one morning, her heart started beating out of her chest, and she's like, "Oh my God, the last time this happened, you know, I got the vision that I should set up this healing centre."
Okay.
And she said, "What is it?" And she sat, and she was like, "You're meant to teach Tantra with Piers, so sacred sexuality, relationships." She's like, "Oh my God," because I was in my 30s at that point, 31, 32. She's like, "Okay, I'm just going to get hurt." So she told me, and she said to me, "This is what I'd like to do." And I'm like, "Oh my God." Well, when she told me that, I was like, "Sure, yeah, I'm up for leading workshops together." She said, "No, you don't understand. It means we'd have to live together. We'd have to be sexual partners." And I'd be like, "Oh, all right, I didn't understand that bit."
Okay, that's quite a lot, yeah.
And so I thought about it for a few weeks, and I was like, "Wow, this is such an honour."
Yeah.
And so we got together in 2008, and then we got married 2009, and we were together until she died earlier on this year. So
I'm really sorry for your loss, Piers.
Yeah, it's been difficult. It goes through waves, really.
Yeah.
It's like it's been tough the last week or so. It's like Christmas, her favourite time of year, and feeling just missing her wisdom.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. So
that's tough.
It is. So to begin with, that's really my greatest teacher. Yeah. For the last 20 years has been her. Yeah. So what I bring into my sessions, I feel is, yes, I have this knowledge of business. You know, I went to basically after I left school, I went on to one of the top business schools in Europe. Yeah. Spent 2 years in France, 2 years in London, worked for some of the biggest companies in the world, and yet the biggest teacher really has been Michelle. Yeah. And teaching me about emotional intelligence. So I had knowledge, but I didn't have, and that's one thing you don't get from boarding schools is emotional intelligence. Sure. And actually I see now through Daniel Goleman's work and so many of the leadership, you've got to have EQ. If you don't, you're just working at 20%. Yeah. Because as Daniel Goleman points out, 80% of your life success is EQ. Yeah. And that's what Michelle really taught me.
And that chapter, I guess, what I'm hearing is that was another part of your growth and your learning, which was about being vulnerable, being in a relationship, being intimate, and that was kind of the opposite of your, you know, the antithesis of your experiences in boarding school and in the monastery, I guess. So you went from that to a very, very close spiritual and you know, human connection with another person. So that's another quite important part of your journey, and that taught you another whole series of things that you now bring to your work. So I mean, your story is just so incredible. I'm kind of waiting for you to tell me something that's kind of average, you know, because so far there's nothing average about your experience. It's all pretty.
But that's the thing. I think that's the thing about boarding school. There's two things here. Is one is I thought at boarding school I got it easy.
Okay.
Because I was good at sport.
Yeah.
But it was only when I started to unpick my experiences, age 13, I hurt my back. I couldn't play sport anymore. And the only person I'm talking to is this guy called Rick.
Okay.
And he's 3 years older than me, really lovely guy. And the housemaster has just left, who was the other guy I was speaking to. It's one guy. And one day, I'm really depressed. I've been sat on my bed, hurt my back, just reading horror novels, and feeling really depressed. And I go to see the doctor. I need help.
Yeah.
And I left the doctor about 9 o'clock, and he said, I can't help you. I'm like, okay. Went back to class. That morning, my friend Rick jumps in front of the London train and kills himself.
Oh no.
And essentially the doctors thought, because you couldn't identify him, they thought it was me who had killed himself. Because I had just left the doctor's office saying I'm suicidal.
Yeah.
And so at that point, we're sent, me and some of the other boys in the house, are sent to the priest. The priest is a paedophile, he sexually abuses me. Now, I always thought I had it easy because I was good at sport.
Yeah.
But actually, it's like, as I share the story, it's like, oh no, that's pretty messed up.
Pretty fucked up.
Yeah. I didn't know if I could swear, but yeah, pretty fucked up.
I think we're allowed. I think if the circumstances call for it, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So, essentially, because of that, my childhood has been extreme.
Yeah.
So therefore, it makes sense that my work life. I mean, with Michelle. Yeah. I mean, I would say on one level it was quite normal, but to everybody else, my relationship was just incredible.
Yeah.
And it wasn't normal.
Yeah.
You know, there was a real spiritual connection and, understanding. She was very much into metaphysics, into, the unified field theories, the things she would share with me. I'm like, wow, okay, yeah.
Mind-blowing.
Absolutely mind-blowing. Some of the stories I could share. Yeah. She was just an incredible woman. This was just normal for her.
Wow.
Essentially, she had a near-death age 33. She had cluster headaches. One day, she got so poorly she died. And she just felt these beings come out of the wall, squash her in to this kind of basically yoga posture.
Yeah.
She suddenly disappeared and found herself hurtling through the universe. And she ended up in the pyramids, and they started to share with her the nature of the universe. And she was like, how do I remember all this stuff?
Yeah.
Says, don't worry, we will put people in your path over the next 30, 40 years that will teach you these things. And so she would see something online or a book, and she goes, oh yeah, that's truth.
Yeah.
Because I've already been taught this.
Yeah.
And so she was just like, she had quite a few experiences like that.
Amazing.
And
So, I mean, so much here, Piers. It feels like we could have a series of conversations about this, but I guess I'm really keen to turn to the film. Bordering on insanity. I've been watching the film, and it's really powerful. So many insights. I think so many people are going to get a lot of benefit from it. Equally, I kept thinking to myself, God, that must have been really difficult for Piers to film this, to make this.
Yeah.
So I was kind of wondering, was the end of making the film, and you've been out screening it and showing it and having panel discussions and all that about it. Do you at this point feel that it's been a growth experience, a kind of healing experience to make the film, or have there been times where you've thought, do you know what, I've just embarked on something that's just been too painful? Because it's you had to come into real close contact with and revisit a lot of these places, like physically and emotionally.
Yeah. It's been really tough. I wouldn't have been able to do it without Michelle, which is so interesting that on one level, we had a screening in London on the 1st of March.
Yeah.
We'd got to fill this 400-seat cinema. How are we going to do that? No one's really going to cinemas anymore. And then the Sunday, it's the 9th of February, Michelle dies. And I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I feel as stressed as I've ever been.
Yeah.
And suddenly she just dies, has a heart attack. We don't get a chance to say goodbye. And I'm like, oh my God. So in answer to your question, it's been really tough.
Yeah.
And I've wanted to give up many times.
Yeah.
Certainly over the 3 years of the production.
Because you went through with the screening, didn't you? You did the screening.
Yeah, we went ahead with
even though you lost your wife. It was,
yeah. So we went ahead with the screening, and then we did live webinars of which you were part of the panel, and then we released it globally on the 15th of March, and then my wife's funeral was the 17th of March.
My God.
And it's like, it's been intense. So have I wanted to give up? Of course, 1,000 times. And the team, Simon Hinckley, Ben Cole, Shearer, McLeod, they've just been incredible. So many of the supporters, so many of the people who are involved in it have been so supportive. Just that community. And I think one of the things which I found from boarding school is I had no one there. There was no one there. When I needed someone most, after Rick died, someone just took total advantage of me. That was the kind of nature. Whereas since Michelle's died, it's like people have just stepped up. Right, I'm here for you. And my sense is it's really exciting. Boarding schools are starting to, I see, fall apart. I spoke to someone at a conference I was speaking at a couple of weeks ago, and who works in a boarding school, and she says they've just gone into survival mode. They're not listening to any of the psychology. They're not concerned with that. They're building new science blocks. They're building new ensuite bathrooms for the kids. And I'm like, okay, they've gone into survival mode. That means they're starting to die, because if you're not growing, you're dying. And their marketing idea is to start early boarding again. There's 2% of children who are being sent at the moment. It's not working anymore because parents want their children around. So for me, it's really exciting time.
So things are definitely changing.
100%.
And what kind of reaction have you had from people who've seen the film? What kind of, have you had people getting in touch, explaining what it's meant to them?
We've had hundreds of people get in touch, and it's been really touching. People who've maybe, it's started a conversation. I think the thing with the film is you can read a book, Nick Duffel's Making of Them, which is an incredible book, or Joy Chavrin's Boarding School Syndrome. You can read them, but it takes a long time. And if you give someone a book, they've got to spend the next few weeks, whereas a film is like 90 minutes. And the response has been great. People, like my mother's watched it.
Wonderful.
And she said, what did she say? I think after she says, I do love you. Because obviously that's one of the wounds which comes out of boarding school, is you feel that your mother hates you.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things which comes out of boarding school, is you feel that your mother hates you. Because obviously that's one of the wounds which comes out of boarding school, is you feel that your mother hates you.
Yeah.
Because your father hates you, because why else
Why
would they send you away?
It's interesting that you feel that the boarding schools are on decline, and let's hope so. It seems, from a psychological and child development point of view, a really bad idea. I mean, of course, I'm not judging people who make that choice for all kinds of reasons, and I'm sure people think they're doing a positive thing for their children. But removing children from that parental relationship, from that constant source of being reminded that you're loved and valued and connected, and then creating this situation where you have to become self-reliant, you have to internalize your emotions, you can't make yourself vulnerable, you can't experience a full range of emotions openly, and it's kind of unnatural. It's extremely unnatural. And I have worked clinically with people who've been to boarding school, and their wounds of manifest as psychosis, mainly due to bullying and abuse that they experienced in those institutions. So I'm not a huge fan of that idea. But still, I spoke to someone last week who said very proudly, "Oh yeah, my son goes to this particular college, very, very prestigious," and was clearly full of pride and pleased that they could provide that privilege to their child, And I'm thinking, wow, have you thought this through? It's kind of unnatural to remove a child from their caregivers at that early age and then expect them to develop emotionally in a normal trajectory. How does that work? How do people turn out at the end normal, if that's the right word? I'm not sure that's the right word, but healthy, I guess, is the better word, isn't it? So I guess if there are people probably watching this, I mean, I want to get into just two more things I want to get into. One is the biographies of famous people. I'm really, really fascinated by what you told me about that. And secondly, but before we move on to that slightly different track, what advice would you give to? It should be pretty obvious if they've watched this far. But what kind of advice would you give to people who are considering sending their children to boarding school, or it's been a family tradition and it's they're thinking about doing that for their kids?
Research. Listen to some of your work. Read some of the ACEs studies.
Yeah.
I have probably 7 to 8 ACEs.
Okay.
From my childhood, and I've struggled in so many levels.
Yeah.
And my understanding is probably boarding school. We've talked about this, the idea of doing an adverse school experience. Yeah. But my sense is that people just going to boarding school, that's an ACE, full stop. Just going into that door, that first day, you're starting to stack life against them. Yes, they might get good jobs to start off with.
Yeah.
But leadership is changing.
Yeah.
And they're not looking for leaders who are command and control anymore.
Yes.
And that is what boarding schools will create, a command and control leadership. They do not create emotionally intelligent leaders.
Yes.
And that's how, and it's coming from America. A lot of Microsoft, Cisco systems, Salesforce, they're using compassion. They're using emotional intelligence as training. We're really stunted if we've been to a boarding school around connecting to our emotions. And therefore, we're not going to get the top positions anymore. We might be there for a year or two,
but might not be successful in it.
We're not going to be successful at all. And because markets are changing, and it's a difficult time at the moment, if I look at it from an IQ and EQ, Daniel Goleman says IQ will be replaced mainly by AI.
Yeah. What's
going to be needed, and I was listening to Zach Cass, who was one of the senior managers at OpenAI, ChatGPT. He says, when people say to me, what skills should I learn? It's soft skills.
Sure.
And compassion, empathy, those things. These schools do not teach that.
Yep.
Yes, they might have, a good CV.
Yep.
But they will really struggle.
They're going to struggle in that complex human environment.
Yeah.
And this is really fascinating, this particular subject that we're moving into now. And but before I do move on to this, what kind of leaders does it create? There was a study by Richard Layard and colleagues from London School of Economics where they studied children from the point they entered primary school to the point they finished secondary school, and then they followed them up regularly until they were 34 years of age. And what they found was that the best predictor of adult life success and satisfaction at age 34, across a whole range of different measures, was the child's emotional well-being whilst they were at secondary school, closely followed by their conduct, because obviously, you know, your emotional state is going to affect your behaviour. And the worst predictor of their satisfaction with life and their success at age 34 was their educational attainment whilst they're at secondary school. So we have to create an educational system, whatever it is, that is prioritising safety, is prioritising relationships, that every single child has a safe adult they can relate to, that if they have a problem, there's a trusted person they can go and talk to. And schools act in loco parentis. They are parenting our children for us while we're not there. Legally, that's their responsibility, and that requires safety and access to trusted adults. And the research we've done recently as part of a randomised trial looking at trauma-informed approaches in secondary school tells us that a very significant minority of children do not feel safe at secondary school, and they say there isn't a safe, trusted adult they could name that they could approach if they had a problem. So some of the fundamental things that children need are relational and human to help their normal development, their natural optimal development. Anything that's extreme, like the situation you've described, is not going to help that optimal development. So the kind of product at the end of that is not a healthy, balanced, emotionally rounded, expressive, ability to be vulnerable kind of personality, is it? It's not going to be those things that know what big companies are looking for. Yeah. So we talked about you've been reading all the lots of biographies of very famous people, and you've noticed that there's some strong commonalities in their stories. Do you want to just say a little bit about that? Because I found that incredibly fascinating.
Yeah, so I feel like I did almost a triple blind study.
Okay.
Which, double blind, triple blind.
Yeah.
I would go into a charity shop. My wife would go and look at clothes. Would do this on the weekends, and I would look at the books. And if there was a book there which was a biography, I'd look through the biography or autobiography, and I'd see, did they go to boarding school? Yes, I'd buy it. So I did that, and I have about 50 to 55 biographies, from Paris Hilton to Charles Spencer to King Charles to Richard Branson, David Cameron, Boris Johnson, Bear Grylls, all of these people. And then what I've done is I've just read through them. Yeah. And each one I get, I'm like, this will be one where they'll be really positive. They loved it. Yeah. And each one, there's at least a few aces in them. Yeah. So Bear Grylls, he talks about getting to Eton. He said, first of all, to his prep school, he says, when I got to boarding school, all I felt was fear. Right. Fear forces you to look tough on the outside, but makes you weak on the inside. Yes. He gets to Eton. Older boy decides that he doesn't like him, and he comes into the study quite often, and he talks about his shoulder nearly snapping, kicking him, and that's when he got into martial arts, because he's like, right, I've got to learn to defend myself. David Cameron, he lost a stone in weight, which again, I lost 2 stones in the monastery. I was quite skinny, but you have to think of a 7.5 to 8 year old child. They're going to be probably 3.5 to 4 stone. Then you put that into context, you're losing 1/3 to 1/4 of your body weight. Boris Johnson, he had quite a tough time. He was of Turkish lineage. He'd come over from Brussels. In the biography Just Boris, talks about how he put on this 1920s persona, who was bumbling, idiot type thing, and that was his survival personality. Yeah. And so you realise that so many, if you look at Richard Branson, so he went age 7. Within a few weeks, few months, he's told to get in bed with one of the older boys and play fiddlies with him, and he's beaten regularly because he's dyslexic, and he's beaten until he bleeds. And age 13 he gets expelled, and he's so distraught he writes a suicide note, and he goes to commit suicide. The teachers stop him. Wow. And you realise, and as I look through each of these stories, I'm always expecting, oh, this would be one where there's something good.
Yeah, a happy ending kind of thing, or positives.
And so from those 50 odd biographies, there's only one really where there isn't an ace or
Okay.
and I think I forget
Whose was that? Yeah.
that was a comedian.
Okay.
He's quite young,
Okay.
and I wonder
Not Jack
if it,
Whitehall, no.
yes,
That was it, right? Yeah.
yeah. So but in there he doesn't talk about any abuse or,
Right, of course, yeah.
but maybe in a few years.
Maybe, yeah. And you said to me as well, the other thing is you think, well, you hear that and you go, surely they're writing in their biography about this terrible experience, this negative, abusive experience, or a lack of, a mission of love and kindness and care and connection. You would think, wow, these are the people that are definitely not going to send their kids to boarding school.
Yeah, and they do. You
And
know,
they do.
Of course. Bear Grylls, he sent his children there. David Cameron, I don't know, to be honest, because I think he did send them to a secondary because he was
Because he was
Prime
promised
Minister.
it was good optics, wasn't it?
Yeah. But you know, a lot of them do end up sending because we've dissociated.
Yeah.
So we might write about this, but we don't feel it.
Yeah.
So we don't actually feel how that might be. And the illusion is, and it's been this way for hundreds of years, is that it's changed. Oh, it's changed now. It's not as bad now.
Yeah.
Children's Act came in 1986. Right. It's much better. Yes, it was much better, but I still speak to people who are still at boarding school, and they say, oh no, there's still the neglect. And I think that's the key piece, is when people say, well, I wasn't sexually abused or I wasn't beaten. And there's a few aspects there. One is, yes, you weren't, but you were neglected. You have 50 children for one member of staff who's looking after you.
Yeah.
You're neglected. And that's even more damaging, they're showing now.
And they're saying, well, they don't hit kids anymore.
No.
However, yeah.
But there's the neglect.
Yeah.
But there's also, what I'm hearing is there's a lot of sexual abuse happening between the boys and the girls.
Yeah.
You know, slightly different age groups.
Yeah.
You know, and intimidation and bullying. You know, is it a safe place? No, because Alex Renton talks about in the film, is we are a nation addicted to cover up.
Yeah.
Something bad happens, what do?
Yeah.
Cover it up.
Yeah.
Comes out 20, 30 years later.
Yeah.
So are they safe? He doesn't think they are.
Yeah. And also, it's a business. So if there is issues of abuse or neglect or intimidation or culture of bullying, you don't want anyone to know about that, because it's all about reputation, right? You're not going to pay 62 grand a year for a college where you think, oh, there's bullying or they neglect kids or there's a threatening environment. It's all about the PR, isn't it?
Exactly. And the big issue for me is the mandatory reporting. It's still not mandatory in this country to report about sexual abuse. It's not mandatory. People say, oh no, it is law. I put this out there a couple of weeks ago on social media, and many people said I had to check that out because I thought that it was. People will come up to me and say, no, it's not true. It's mandatory. It's like, no, you're advised to. But if you, as an institution, decide not to report, nothing happens.
Okay.
And that's ridiculous. Every other country, they have, not every other country, but a lot of the developed nations have mandatory reporting. But what's interesting is, if I see someone embezzling money and I don't report it, I get 10 years in prison and an unlimited fine. Yeah. But if I see a child being abused and I don't report it, nothing happens to me.
Right. That is criminal.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. So
it should be.
That's a big issue with these schools, is that, you know, they don't have to report.
Yeah.
And because of they are a business, a lot of it's hidden.
They're not going to do. Well, that's incredibly worrying, and you have been campaigning, obviously, to change things around the boarding school system, and ideally you want to see it become a thing of the past. You've done lots of work advocating for this reform and raising awareness, helping people understand this stuff, but you've also got an event at the Houses of Parliament coming up in January, which I'm very privileged to have been invited to. Do you want to say a little bit about that? Because it feels to me like that is a huge step forward in terms of getting this on the radar of MPs and parliamentarians. I think sounds like a big deal.
Yeah, it is. So it's just like one step, a bit like the dominoes. Just the little, this some kind of neuroscientist pointed out that if you have a domino this big by 8, you can knock over one which is 3.5 feet high, because it just needs to be 50% more.
Okay.
And it's similar with this. Like, we've just done screenings around the country. An MP came to one of the screenings, Simon Ofer from Stroud, and he said, why don't we show it in the House of Commons?
Brilliant.
And we're like, yeah, great. And so we have yourself on the panel. We have Tanny Gray Thompson, the Olympian. We have Alexi, I've forgotten it. Alexi J. Yeah, the ICSA, former chair of ICSA. We've got
ICSA,
yourself,
the Independent
Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse.
Yeah.
They're going to be there. We've got quite a few CEOs of charities which are going to be there, and we're looking to get as many MPs as possible. So we're asking people to write to their local MPs. We want you there. And it does feel, and I think this is the thing, I feel we often feel quite powerless as a society. There's nothing I can do. And my message is, no, actually, you're exceptionally powerful. That's what I learned from Michelle. Is you can change. You have a vision, and you get to that certainty that it's going to happen. For me, by 2035, all under 16 boarding schools will close. We will have mandatory reporting by 2030. We will have ACE and trauma aware around the same time. So it's like having these visions that, no, this is going to happen. We will do. And it's not me. There's literally thousands, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people doing this work across the globe. And I think the parliamentarian screening, it's like, that's the next step.
Because you're trying to get, you're getting people to care about things you care about, right? That's kind of what we're about. This is hopefully a little part of that. But the event is, hopefully we're going to get parliamentarians to champion this cause as well. And they can amplify this message, and they can influence, and I do totally believe what you say about, it's one domino after the other. It's one relationship connecting with another relationship, and it has a knock-on effect. And I'm just really impressed by all the kind of progress that you're making on this agenda. And I mean, you've made me care about it. I remembered seeing a few clients when I was working in Manchester who experienced trauma at boarding school, but then it was kind of just a thing that I wasn't massively on my agenda. But now it's something that I talk about quite a lot. So bit by bit, you're changing the world, and you've got these really clear goals that you want to see. And hopefully this conversation today and the conversations that are going to happen in the House of Westminster will be Palace of Westminster, is it?
I always thought it was the House.
Is that where the Lords are, that one?
So the Houses of Parliament is Lords and Commons.
Okay, right.
The House of Commons is just the MPs.
Got you. So your screen is in the House of Commons.
House of Commons.
Okay, but we'll let the Lords in if they want to come.
Yeah.
Right.
So Tanny Gray Thompson is a Lord, a Baroness.
Yeah.
So
Wonderful. Well, just exposing my ignorance about the parliamentary system in the UK, but final thing I want to ask Piers, if it's okay, is if people obviously people are going to see this and hopefully be inspired by your story. Two things. One, first of all, how do people get to see the film if they've not seen it? How do they access it?
boardingoninsanity.com. You can watch it there.
Brilliant.
Stream it on our website. And
have you got more screenings lined up, like physical screenings?
We're talking about Edinburgh at the moment. We did try and do one earlier on this year, but for whatever reason we didn't get enough bookings. But every other one we've done has been a sold
really
out.
Busy, yeah.
The one we did in Hebden.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, if people are interested and they really want to screen it then, and they want to organise it, great.
Brilliant. So if people wanted to screen it as well and have a discussion about it, a panel or whatever, they could contact you and you could facilitate.
Yeah, just through our website, boardingoninsanity.com.
Wonderful. And then the other thing is, if people have listen to you talk about your experience. And you've got, I mean, I looked on your website, you've got, you know, a list of qualifications and courses and skills that you've developed over the years. How do people get to work with you if they want to make contact?
Yeah, so through Piers Cross, piers-cross.com, they can reach out, or compassionateleadersglobal.com. So I'm doing a leadership course from January. It's full at the moment. We'll do another one from April. So we take 20 leaders on, and it's a 12-week course.
This is you and Chris?
Me and Chris Braich, yeah. So it would be to just email us. You know, we are taking people on for April.
Brilliant.
And, you know, it's going to be Q&A, live Q&A, but also live check-ins, because one of the big issues for leaders I see at the moment is they feel isolated. No one to talk to. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. And what, just on an individual level, what kind of people work with you? What kind of issues do you help people with?
It's basically 95% at boarding school.
Yeah.
But what I started to do is I started to realise a lot of the people who come to me are partners of law firms, CEOs, founders.
Yeah.
You know, they're working in London or New York, but they went to boarding school. And I see that one of the things we struggle with as ex-boys, we don't trust people.
Yeah.
And because of my experiences, and I'm quite open to share, people go, oh, actually, he knows what I'm talking about because he's been through it.
Absolutely.
So that's who I've worked with. Almost 90 to 95% are men.
Yeah.
I do work with women as well if they reach out to me.
And not just about boarding school syndrome, but also about relationships more generally.
Everything. It's mainly, you know, it's kind of a whole spectrum.
Yeah.
You know, vision. What's your vision? You know, daily practice, emotional intelligence, doing inner work. You know, mission and purpose, relationships, legacy. Those.
You must be pretty good at meditation as well at this point.
Oh, yeah.
You've done a bit of that, haven't you?
I have done quite a lot of meditation.
Wonderful. Well, listen, Piers, it's been fabulous talking to you. Huge pleasure. I really appreciate you sharing so much about your life. You're just an incredible person. I'm really grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Warren. Thank you for your open heart and your willingness to ask great questions. So it's been a real pleasure.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.
I appreciate you and the work you're doing, and you know, thank you for supporting us, because we can't do this on our own. So
yeah, absolutely. Pleasure to support you. Thanks very much.